Bienvenue à tous. Welcome to Reporters here on France 24. I'm MarkOwen. In this edition, China, is it facing up to its pollution problems, churning out greenhouse gases at an alarming rate? China is among the biggest polluters in the world. On his visit to Paris, China's Prime Minister Li Keqiang brought some good news for the planet. China will peak its emission of CO2 within the next 15 years. Now, some of you may be thinking that's a long time to wait, but on this issue, China has stolen a long march on the West. While the major polluters such as the USA are in a shadow play, China has made a pledge in Paris ahead of the UN climate conference here at the end of the year. Our report begins in the fog caused by the pollution in Beijing. Will it end in a clearer, cleaner place? Clémence Thibault has this.
Thick smog shrouding the sky and factories spewing out pollution. These are the images that tend to come to mind when people today think about modern China. But authorities in Beijing are hoping to fight back against the bad public image. The Chinese government has launched a national battle against pollution. But questions remain about what exactly Beijing is doing and what can they do to cope with some of the worst pollution in the world. On this blue sky day in Beijing, we meet up with Zhang Kai, an air pollution specialist with Greenpeace, outside one of the 3 major power plants shut down in Beijing by the authorities in an attempt to clean up the air in the capital.
Today, particle concentration levels are a bit below 5 micrograms per cubic meter. That's below warning levels of 10 micrograms set by the World Health Organization. So that's great. The air isn't polluted at all at the moment.
Official stats show the air quality has improved in Beijing by 13% this past year. But while Beijing's air has improved, Zhang Kai notes the same can't be said for other areas.
In fact, at the same time, factories are being closed down. Chinese authorities are also building new ones in the west, including coal-fired plants in the provinces of Shaanxi and Inner Mongolia. These provinces have smaller populations and less media coverage than Beijing. The Chinese government is making an effort to clean up the air, but it doesn't mean pollution is being eliminated. If anything, the pollution is simply being moved out west.
Environmental activists have chastised the government for sacrificing certain regions of China, particularly when it comes to issues of air and water pollution. Shadian is a small village located about 40 kilometers outside the capital. It specializes in steel production. For over a decade, wastewater polluted with heavy metals has been dumped into the local environment, polluting the local river, leading to dozens of cases of liver and lung diseases among the local population. Shadian is what's known in China as a cancer village. But here, there are no discussions about the national plan to fight pollution, as the local government insists there are no pollution problems in Shadian.
The water is polluted.
You go away.
The smell is really bad. It smells awful.
Polluted? Nonsense. Look over there. We can see 2 wild ducks. There's 2 birds over there. That's a good sign.
However, there are some in Shadian who are willing to speak up, including this local farmer.
Before the factory was built here, there were lots of fish and shrimp which people could catch in the river. The children could go swimming here, but nowadays there's nothing left but the terrible smell.
Feng Jun and his family live close to the factory. But 5 years after it opened in 2006, his 2 daughters fell sick.
When my eldest daughter became ill, we immediately did some tests of the well water we drink, as well as in the river. We discovered the arsenic levels are 3 times higher than the maximum limit allowed. A year later, my daughter died of leukemia, and my other daughter suffered severe thrombosis. The people in charge of the factory have taken no responsibility. My family has been ruined.
Since then, Feng Jun has been looking for ways to have the factory shut down. Our presence in the village and around its largest employer draws out around a dozen men claiming to belong to the local government, who demand we travel with them to the local office. Feng Jun goes back to his own vehicle amid fears of retribution.
I've been beaten up twice. The first time was just after we tested the water quality. 4 security guards from the factory beat me up very badly, forcing me to stay in hospital for 20 days. The next time I was on my way out for cigarettes when someone pulled me into a car, beat me up, then dropped me in Tianjin, which is about 100 kilometers from here. They're very powerful.
After a few minutes driving, we arrive at the factory. It's so productive that its owners have been forced to open up new warehouses for its steel. The guards at the factory are alerted to our presence and demand we leave. The company itself appears very concerned about bad publicity, even though its website claims it cares about the environment.
Effectively achieve zero emission, zero pollution, protecting the environment.
Spending some 700,000 euros on wastewater treatment. It's been a difficult challenge and road for Feng Jun. When his first daughter died, his wife left him with their other daughter. He now lives on his own and without a regular income.
Here's what I have left of my daughters. There's some photos of the eldest one with the doctors and nurses in the hospital.
Despite his hardship, Feng Jun has continued to fight for 10 years through trials and appeals, but has been unable to have the factory shut down.
I've written letters to all the officials, but not a single state employee has replied to me, not any court of justice or attorney. Every time they simply cited the same court decision. Under the current legislation, it's up to me to provide evidence of pollution, but I think it should be the factory which has to prove this. Also, I have papers certifying that the factory is built in the middle of a residential area, which is a big infraction, right? I just don't understand.
It's still very difficult in China to get local authorities to toe the line. A few days later, we meet with Feng Jun again, but this time in Beijing. He's traveled to the capital to meet with a lawyer who volunteers to help victims of industrial pollution. Together, they're trying to create a new court filing.
The company pays a great deal of taxes to the local authorities. It's also the biggest local employer. My client says he has been told by local government it was impossible to give up on the factory or let it lose the lawsuit because local officials and owners of the factory have very close ties. We always come under a lot of political pressure when dealing with cases like this.
But at the same time, Wang Sanfa says changes in Chinese attitudes about pollution could put things into Feng Jun's favor.
He has to draw attention to his case in the Chinese media and in the court of public opinion, so that the case will catch the attention of higher-level officials. If that happens, perhaps higher-level party chiefs will review his case or even make changes to the laws themselves.
For this environmental law specialist, he says he feels the pressure the public can demand can be even more powerful than national policies, which are often only loosely followed by local governments. Today, Wang Sanfa is meeting with young lawyers who are opting to work in his NGO rather than in private practice. There appears to be a growing recognition of pollution issues in China.
My specialty is civil law, but I saw some videos of pollution victims and started to understand the consequences of pollution. It affects the health of all of us. We can't stand by and do nothing. By joining this NGO, it's a chance for me to do something. If I can defend cases which help people, I can help create public awareness, convince lawmakers to do more to improve people's livelihoods.
A few months back, a wide-ranging documentary went viral on the internet. A famous former news anchor produced the film after a tumor was detected in her newborn.
At that time, everyone said the smog in Beijing was due to unusual weather factors. Nobody was really worried about it. I didn't pay much attention to the pollution. I didn't wear any protective masks. But in 2013, there were 2 months of continual smog in Beijing, and I realized that this phenomenon wasn't accidental at all, and the smog would not disappear on its own.
The film itself was filled with numerous stats and shocking pictures, which took aim at industry leaders in China and officials for allowing them to set their own standards. The documentary was viewed over 100 million times during the first and only weekend it was on the internet before it was eventually blocked. Despite the increased knowledge of environmental issues, many are still preferring to leave Beijing because of the pollution. 3,000 kilometers to the southwest of Beijing lies the community of Dali, located in the high mountains of Yunnan. Its lush farmland has drawn many looking for a cleaner life. Zhao Hua left his high-paying job as an IT engineer in Beijing to bring his family to Dali to start a new life as an organic rice farmer.
This way, it's totally different. It's totally different. I know nothing about farm. From ABC now, yeah. I know nothing about it. But now I know maybe a little. Yeah, farming is my favorite now, I think. Money is good, and but calm down and peaceful is the most important, I think.
Zhao Hua's new life in the open air for he and his family has been a refreshing change. They no longer need to use air purifiers at home, wear masks, and can now feel free to take their meals on the veranda.
The air is much better here. Kids are healthier. When he was in Beijing, my son was often sick 2 or 3 times a year. But since we are in Dali, he fell sick just once. Climate is better here. Kids can have outdoor activities. Lots of families from the former school of our kids are thinking to move here. There is nearly no more house to buy in the neighborhood.
The new additions to the countryside are also reconnecting with China's traditional village life. On Saturday mornings, many people come out to this little organic market in Dali to do their shopping. The locally grown food is sometimes twice as expensive as it would be in other places, but people here don't seem to mind.
It's really better, really healthier. You really can find and rediscover the real taste of vegetables.
This kind of market didn't used to exist in the neighborhood. Organic markets are something new. It's a first step to connect all the people who make organic food in Dali.
Many in this tight-knit community say they're convinced this lifestyle will eventually spread around China in the years to come.
This is the first generation in China. The parents they worked hard for the last 20 years, and because our economic only growing fast in the last 20 years. So this is just the beginning, the first generation people could afford to have a different lifestyle. So we hope as long as the government coming along with the people to support this community life, then definitely will be a much easier and healthier life in China.
But while China goes through a green conversion, Feng Jun still lives in his polluted village of Shadian outside Beijing, waiting to launch a new suit to shut down the factory, which he blames for the death of his eldest daughter nearly 10 years ago.
Our reporter Clémence Dibou joins us now from Shanghai. Clémence, thank you very much for your report. China has come up with its plan to combat pollution. Is it realistic? Can China be trusted?
In terms of China, there's a real willingness in Beijing to fight against pollution. Why? Well, because it's a major concern for Chinese people. As you saw in that report, people are increasingly worried about the impact of pollution on their health. Some are even outraged by the nonchalance of certain companies and factories that continue polluting. The Chinese government want to avoid frustrations building up, so they're really trying to show that they're doing something about it and demonstrating a real political will to tackle pollution, even taking on the more powerful industries.
Clémence, China cleaned up its act for the Beijing Olympics of 2008. I was there to cover that and saw a big change. This involved moving whole factories, sometimes towns. Is this likely to be part of China's plan now, shifting the problem rather than actually solving it at its core?
Beijing has made commitments to the international community, as we've seen in Europe and France, but it's also made commitments to its people. The city has promised to limit domestic coal consumption and says that, as a result, air quality in Beijing should improve. Well, these commitments and their dedication to being transparency means that it's out of the question for the government not to meet these goals, especially in Beijing, where most of the international observers are based. They want to present Beijing as a model city which has reduced the number of polluting factories, even though they've just pushed some of them a little further out.
Clémence, as you well know, corruption has played a role in the pollution problem. Is the government in Beijing committed to tackling that too?
Yes, it's a real step forward towards developing a major national policy against pollution. In fact, there are two things. Firstly, there's the large state factories, which the government has clearly in their sights. It's quite easy to slap fines on them, and the government often does this to show they're mobilised against pollution. From what we've seen, though, locally, it's far more complicated. The factories are very tied into local government. They're also crucial for employment and provide a significant cash flow for the region.
Clémence Dibou in Shanghai, thank you very much indeed. That's it for this edition. You can see it again, of course, via our website, france24.com. Stay with us.